So guys, there was one more story that I wanted to make sure and cover today because it is deeply troubling. Hassan Piker, who is one of the most, if not the largest, most prominent pro-Palestine voice in the country, was detained for hours by Customs and Border Patrol as he tried to re-enter the country. He was flying in from France, and he was questioned on his views on Israel-Palestine for hours. Hasan recently spoke about this experience. Let's go ahead and take a listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
I'm sitting there and they're asking me about Trump. They're asking me about like Hamas and he kept saying stuff. He kept saying stuff like, do you like Hamas? Like, do you support Hamas? Do you think Hamas is a resistance group? Do you think Hamas is a terrorist group or a resistance group? Like, he just kept asking over and over again, right? And I kept repeating the same statement over and over again. And every single time he asked me a question, a leading question about Hamas, I kept saying, the United States State Department recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization. The fact that a lot of the shit that like the Ethan Kleins of the world have like cried about over and over again were unironically brought up in that fucking conversation. The Houthi. Like, did you interview a Houthi? It says here that you interviewed a Houthi. And I was like, or was he actually a Houthi? And I was like, he's not. You can look to all of the reporting that came out afterwards and before I interviewed him that he's not a Houthi. The very fact that that was like a point of contention that could have fucking gotten me arrested is insane. And I genuinely in that moment was thinking like, these fucking dumbass slop tubers are actually playing with fucking fire.
So there is a lot to say about this. So first of all, he's referring to the quote unquote hot Houthi that he interviewed a while back. Turns out the guy was not even a Houthi, which is what he's talking about here. But clearly CBP grilling him on his political views and stances over the course of hours. And what Hasan points to there, he mentions Ethan Klein, who's his former podcast host, who he's had a falling out with primarily over some personal things, but also primarily over their respective views on Israel-Palestine. And so Ethan has been going in and criticizing Hasan for things like his interview with the quote-unquote hot Houthi. And so he's pointing to the fact that these CBP agents seemingly knew about the nature of this online critique. And it reminded me of the fact that you have this, extreme Zionist radical organization called Beitar that has been claiming credit for giving the Trump administration lists of students that they want to be arrested and ultimately deported, and have been tweeting out these lists. And there's some indication that the Trump administration is using social media for these types of operations. That's certainly what Beitar Worldwide is claiming. There's no confirmation of that from the Trump administration. But the fact that Hasan was targeted in this way and questioned in this manner, obviously deeply, deeply troubling. And Hasan himself, in another portion of his commentary here, talks about how he thinks this was very intentional to create a climate of fear and to try to get him and others to shut up about their views that differ from the stance of this administration. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
The reason for why they're doing that is, I think, to try to create an environment of fear, to try to get people like myself, or at least like others that would be in my shoes that don't have that same level of security, to shut the fuck up. And for me, I'm going to use the privilege that I have in that moment to try and see what the fuck they're doing.
So he talks there about how they're trying to create a climate of fear. Hasan is not the first person who has been seemingly targeted by Customs and Border Patrol, by the Trump administration in this manner. An immigration attorney who was returning back to the U.S. was similarly pulled aside for hours and questioned. With him, it was specifically about the work that he does, and they wanted to seize his phone and get a hold of his client list. Again, an immigration attorney. And this ties in with the larger project of the Trump administration, where they have been either overtly or floating the idea of labeling as domestic terrorists anyone who supports the Palestinian cause. So Hasan, again, being one of the most, if not the most prominent pro-Palestine voice in the country, getting targeted is deeply, deeply troubling. So that's one category of people. We've seen, of course, the way that they've applied this to students who are here on visas, even legal permanent residents like Mahmoud Khalil, not for any sort of criminal activity, but literally just for their speech, for penning an op-ed or being involved in a protest movement that is pro-Palestine. So Hassan appears to have been directly targeted because of his views on that issue. But that's not the only group that they've been going after, as evidenced by the immigration attorney who was pulled aside. Sebastian Gorka, who is the White House's counterterror czar, and Ken Klippenstein has done great reporting on this. He has floated that anyone who opposes the Trump administration's deportation policy should be seen as a domestic terrorist. And of course, we saw a judge who was arrested, in that context, and AOC and others have been threatened with arrest for advising immigrants of their rights and the rights that they can avail themselves of in this country. He's also floated labeling as domestic terrorists people who are just critical of the Trump regime. So the hands-off protesters he mentioned as well. Of course, Pam Bondi gave a press conference where she officially said that people who harbor ill will against Tesla, that they should be treated as domestic terrorists. And we know there have been, they really threw the book at some individuals who are accused of vandalizing Teslas or Tesla property. So this is part of a larger pattern. And it seems like Hassan handled it incredibly well. I don't know that I would have been so cool under fire as he was, gave, answers that they couldn't really use to do anything with. But he had the sense that they were trying to get him to express some sort of support for Hamas or for the Houthis, both of which are labeled terrorist organizations by the State Department, as he rightly points out, so that they could have some sort of pretext to potentially detain him, arrest him, and hold him for a longer period of time. So I don't know, guys. This is I think, another escalation when you're targeting prominent media figures simply for their speech on a topic that is dissonant from the Trump administration, from their regime. There were a few other things going on here that I just wanted to make sure and highlight. There's a video that recently went viral of a Massachusetts ICE raid where they are trying to arrest a mother. Her teenage daughter is obviously very upset. She's also holding a young child. There's a crowd that gathers at the scene. The agents, I'm not sure if these were ICE agents or local police, also got involved with this, even though they are not supposed to be involved whatsoever in immigration enforcement. But in any case, the teenage daughter ends up getting slammed and her face pushed into the ground. Let's go ahead and take a look at that footage.
Definitely a chaotic scene on Eureka Street Thursday as Worcester police and ICE agents detained a mother and her 16-year-old daughter. That girl's face slammed into the ground as she was taken into custody. They have not been identified. Worcester police said officers were dispatched to the area for a report of a federal agent surrounded by about 24 people. When police arrived, they say the teen daughter was holding a newborn baby in her arms and standing in front of the ICE vehicle that was trying to leave with their mother inside. Officers told her she was endangering the baby, so she handed the newborn to a relative, but police allege as the ICE vehicle drove away, she ran after it and kicked the side of it. She was arrested and charged with reckless endangerment of a child, disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest.
These are the types of scenes that are increasingly playing out across the country, including some of the public pushback. You can see there's a crowd that forms that is very concerned about what is happening, that is attempting to intervene. The police claim they were called in, because this is their line, since they can't be involved directly in immigration enforcement, they were called in for crowd control, and that their actions were consistent with trying to get the crowd that had gathered there under control. But, there has been increasing pushback from the public on these draconian tactics that are being utilized, including against, a teenage girl here who gets thrown to the ground. I was reading the local Massachusetts press. I think you pronounce it Worcester. Sorry, Massachusetts people, if I get that wrong. But in any case, there's a local uproar about the way all of this went down. And we've seen in other towns where actually public protest led to the release of some other immigrants who had been arrested and detained, including a child who had been arrested from school, and the principal and others pushed pushed back and they were able to, secure the at least temporary release. Some good news I did want to share with you, though, in light of especially consistent with the news about Hasan here. We've been tracking all of the students that have been arrested for their speech, their pro-Palestine speech. One of those is Rumeysa Ozturk. We all watched the video of her getting snatched and kidnapped up off the street. Her crime, the only thing that this administration has ever accused her of, is penning an op-ed for the student newspaper calling for divestment from anything associated with Israel. That's literally all that she's ever been accused of. She's never been accused of any crime, even of saying from the river to the sea, God forbid. None of that. Just this op-ed in the student newspaper. She was arrested for that. The Trump administration shipped her down to Louisiana because they thought that the judges there would be harsher vis-a-vis immigrants and that they would have a better chance of being able to secure Ozturk's continued detention and eventual deportation for what is very clearly just on the grounds of speech. They lost that battle to keep her in Louisiana, so that was a significant win for Rumeysa Ozturk. She gets transferred back to Vermont. They hear her case in Vermont, and ultimately, this has not been fully decided yet, but they did decide while the trial is pending, they did decide to release Rumeysa Ozturk, so she is now free for the moment while that case is pending. She spoke out about everything that's going on, including why she appreciates and respects this country, which I'm not sure that I would be big enough to say at this particular moment. But just take a listen to her comments upon her release.
I will continue my case in the courts. I came to United States to pursue my graduate studies, learn and grow as a scholar, and also to contribute to child development fields with my teaching, research, and applied work. America is the greatest democracy in the world, and I believe in those values that we share. I have faith in the American system of justice. This has been a very difficult time for me, for my community at TAS, at Turkey, but I'm so grateful for all the support, kindness, and care. My advisor sent me my dissertation proposal to the prison.
I was really struck there by, first of all, she says America is the greatest democracy in the world. I believe in those values that we shared, like the ability to hold on to that sentiment at this particular time when those democratic rights are very much under assault, and that she is bearing the brunt of that assault, I thought was pretty incredible. And also that even in this moment, when she's going through such a trying ordeal, she's still thinking about the other women that she saw and the pain and the anguish that they were suffering inside the immigration center. And I was actually talking to producer Mac before this segment. It really is incredible, the people that they have made an example of. Every one of them appears to be just the most kind, big-hearted, incredible people that you can imagine, whether it's Mohsen Madawi, if you listen to what he has to say about the need for justice for everyone and human rights and dignity for all. Mahmoud Khalil, he just penned an op-ed. We can put this up on the screen. Remember, this is a guy he is still being held in detention. He was denied the ability to be present for the birth of his firstborn child. And that's who he's writing to here. And again, all because he was just involved as a facilitator and a negotiator in the Columbia pro-Palestine protest. He says to his newborn son, Dean, my heart aches that I could not hold you in my arms and hear your first cry, that I could not unfurl your clenched fists or change your first diaper. I am sorry that I was not there to hold your mother's hand or to recite the Adhan or to call to prayer in your ear. But my absence is not unique. Like other Palestinian fathers, I was separated from you by racist regimes and distant prisons. In Palestine, this pain is part of daily life. Babies are born every day without their fathers, not because their fathers choose to leave, but because they are taken by war, by bombs, by prison cells, and by the cold machinery of occupation. The grief your mother and I feel is but one drop in a sea of sorrow that Palestinian families have drowned in for generations. And again, here he is, still detained, still being held for the crime of participating in a protest, and barred from being able to be there for the birth of his child. and still is thinking not just about himself, but is thinking about the broader cause and those who he says are suffering even more greatly than he is, and his wife too, by the way, who is an American citizen. I mean, his child is an American citizen, his wife is an American citizen. And so while Mahmoud Khalil's rights are being denied here because of his speech, so are those of his wife, of his American citizen wife, is also having her life turned upside down because he dared to speak out against genocide being committed with our U.S. tax dollars in Gaza. So extraordinary individuals and deeply troubling times. You know, to go back to Hasan here, I do wonder if the timing of this questioning and detention has to do with, he was recently the subject of a New York Times profile. Like Hasan is has a gigantic audience. I think he's the largest Twitch political streamer that is out there. But he's also had more and more sort of mainstream crossover lately, which has also raised his profile. And so I wonder if that's also part of what made him a target. Kudos to him for not buckling under the pressure and speaking out about everything that he experienced, because the goal here, like he said, is to create a climate of fear. And you cannot allow that to happen. You have to continue to speak out on, issues of importance. And he also spoke about how, having this large profile and having this level of national fame also gives him a sort of privilege. So very admirable that he's thinking about that under those circumstances and not buckling under the pressure. All right, guys, that is the show for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and Tim Miller and David Sirota. Emily and Ryan are going to be in tomorrow for Counterpoints. Thank you also to all of the premium subscribers out there who have been supporting us and enabled our expansion to the Friday show. Super, super grateful for all of your support, and we're going to have some more big news for you guys coming soon, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you soon.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.